We were out of town most of last week, and when we're out of town, I typically work remotely and did that. Came back on Thursday, late in the day on Thursday, and in the middle of the morning on Friday morning, about 2 o'clock, my phone rings. You never want to hear your phone ring at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And I missed it. It started to go to voicemail, and I looked to see who it was, and it was my mother from downstairs. She had taken a fall. She's all right. She's all right. But I spent with her much of Friday and a lot of yesterday in the hospital, seeing that she got the care that she needed. If you ever need to practice patience, an emergency room is going to give you a lot of opportunity to do that. If you ever need to practice letting go and just being in the peace of the moment and letting it unfold, an emergency room will give you the opportunity to do that. Big time, big time. She's fine, but just listening to that song is so helpful to me, just to remember to be with the ebb and flow of life. That no matter how long we have studied these teachings and how long we have practiced the principles and used the tools, it doesn't keep us from experiencing the difficult things in life. They just happen. And when they do, the advantage that you and I have is that we have trained ourselves to look at it in a certain way and to rely on the principles and the spiritual truths that we know to help us navigate it better than we would absent of those things. Does that make sense? So ours is a very practical teaching. We just don't always know where we're going to be tested to put it into practice. Those situations can be very, very different from time to time. And so today, as I talk with you and as I listen to the words that come out of my mouth, I'm thinking about and listening to the wisdom of this idea of beyond the lie of lack. Beyond the lie of lack. So we've been exploring the principles and ideas of the abundance within us and how that impacts the way we live our lives, the things we say yes to, the things we say no to. And this idea of lack is one of the stumbling blocks that many of us have to get beyond. This concept of abundance and prosperity that I've been sharing in this series is founded on what I believe is an important distinguishing factor, and that is that abundance and prosperity are not the same thing. They are different. Abundance is a state of consciousness. It's a state of being. It's a felt experience. Prosperity is a state of condition. Prosperity can be measured. It's not one or the other, it is both and. But until we really understand and get clear in our minds and our hearts the difference between abundance and prosperity, I think we will find ourselves having a lot of problems. Because when we live in times when the economic situation is changing or uncertain, as it certainly seems to be for a lot of people today, if we do not understand that there's a difference between prosperity and abundance, we are likely to feel unnecessary fear because we experience in times that are challenging financially that our channels of abundance shift and change. Some of them dry up and disappear completely. And that can be a scary thing, right? That can be a very scary thing. But when we understand the truth with capital T, when we understand truth, we know that the source is infinite. That abundance, whether it's abundance of time sitting in an emergency room, it doesn't matter where the abundance is needed. The abundance is a state of consciousness, and it is infinite. It comes from the very source of being. A way to hold this that I think can be helpful is to look at abundance in a metaphorical way, as if abundance is like the ocean, almost infinite, ever flowing, and that prosperity is like the cup we take to the ocean, right? The ocean, abundant, ever flowing, equally available to everyone. But some go to the ocean with a bucket, some go to the ocean with a cup, some go to the ocean with a thimble. And the experience of the ocean is very different in those three situations, is it not? If we do not recognize the abundance, if we do not recognize the difference, we are likely to think, oh my gosh, there just isn't enough. When what is really going on is we have come to the ocean, we have come to the infinite abundant source with a thimble rather than a bigger container. Does that make sense? You're very quiet. Does that make sense? Sure it does. And so keeping that fresh in our mind is an important piece of moving beyond this lie of lack. There's a term that we use quite a bit in metaphysics, and it's the term scarcity mindset or scarcity consciousness. I'm sure you've heard of it. Scarcity mindset or scarcity consciousness is a mindset or a pattern of thinking where the thinker believes there just isn't enough. And you can fill in the blank of whatever the enough is. There isn't enough money. There isn't enough opportunity. There isn't enough time. That's a big one for me often the time. I have to really work with myself on that one. And sometimes I do a good job and sometimes I don't do a good job. But the scarcity mindset is a mindset of habitually thinking there just isn't enough. Not enough time, not enough money, not enough opportunity, not enough resource. And we have to challenge that kind of thinking. Underneath that scarcity mindset is the feeling that not only is there not enough, but here's where it becomes really problematic. Not only is the mindset the belief that there's just not enough, it is also that because I believe there is not enough, I had better really hold on to what I got. Does that make sense? Got to really hold on to what I got. I better not let it go. I better not let it flow because it just might not come back. So I hold on to it tightly. I hold on to it tightly. What do we know about the body when it is being held tightly? What do we know about the circulatory system? If it's tight, if it's constricted, how does your body feel? How do your muscles feel if they are tight and constricted? Does it feel good? No. Why? Because there needs to be this openness, this ability, whether we're talking about the body and the energy flowing through the body or the circulatory system, there needs to be a flow, an ebb and a flow, an in and an out. Take a moment and just for a moment, ask yourself, in fact, if you want, go ahead and close your eyes, and just reflect on the most recent time that you felt that there just wasn't enough, that you had that not enough feeling. And just notice, what was it that you felt there wasn't enough of? And then even more importantly, take a moment to see if you can identify where in your body you felt that. Where did you feel that not enough feeling? We don't always feel it in the same place, but where did you feel that not enough feeling? And then take a deep breath in and release that breath and just silently say to yourself, I let this go. I let this go. I let this go. And open your eyes if you had them closed. But just taking a moment like that to try to identify and remember, where is it that I hold that not enough feeling? Am I holding it in, like my muscles are tight, I'm feeling constricted? Do I feel it in my jaw? Do I feel it in my forehead? Do I feel it in my shoulders? Being able to pay attention to that and notice it is important. we understand in this teaching that we can't change something if we don't know that we're doing that thing, right? And so in order to change it, we have to be aware of it. That's why when we first learn a new idea, a new spiritual idea, or a new truth, and we go, oh gosh, that one really registers to be right to me. I really recognize that. You've had that experience, right? And you say to yourself, I'm going to really put that into practice. And then what usually happens? What usually happens is you catch yourself all the times you're doing the very thing that you don't want to be doing. That's happened to you, hasn't it? Sure it has. And it's easy to think, oh my goodness, I must be doing this wrong. When in fact, probably the opposite is true. You're doing it right for the first time because you caught yourself. Before, you and I were probably doing it many times, whatever that thing is that we're trying to change, but unconsciously. And when we've been doing it unconsciously, we can't change it. But as soon as we hear a new truth, like the truth that there is no lack, that there is an abundant source, that we can come to this abundant source with openness, with faith, with trust, with a bucket rather than a thimble, when we get that, what happens is then we start to notice every time we have been buying into the lie, every time that incorrect messaging has been circulating in our mind. So in contrast to the scarcity mindset is what we call an abundance consciousness. And again, it's a consciousness. It's not the thing we're measuring. It's not the physical manifestation. It's the mindset that we have about how we move through life. The mindset that trusts there is enough opportunity. There is enough good. There is enough supply. I need to have the creativity. I need to connect my mind to that. I will have to get up off my affirmations and do some work. It's not just, it's very unlikely it's just going to go plop right in my lap. But the potential for it exists right here. It's founded on our core or our first principle of unity, that there's one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, omnipotent, everywhere, equally present. And if you're hung up on the God word, put a different word in there. But it's that this source is equally present. It's not any more where I am than it is where you are, whether I recognize it or not. And that's the biggie, right? That's why in so much of this work, we are trying to work at the level of the mind. We're trying to teach ourselves to see things differently. I think we should see things with rose-colored glasses, quite honestly. How about you? I think it might work better than the way that sometimes we look at things. So an abundance consciousness recognizes that life is not a zero-sum game, that there is opportunity equally present for all of us. It also recognizes that we're not all starting at the same starting point. Some of us have started with a lot of advantage. Just being born in this country, even if we disagree with a lot that's happening now, is a significant advantage. And yet within just our country, we could say just our state, just this area we call San Diego, we're not all starting from the same starting point. But we do all have the same access to this ocean of abundance, whether it's the abundance of time, the abundance of opportunity, the abundance of creativity, the abundance of resources. I'm going to take just a moment to talk a little bit, before I give a few how-tos here, on 3 common roots for the scarcity consciousness. And maybe there are more, but here are 3 roots I can identify that contribute to this scarcity mindset. The first is a direct experience of lack. A direct experience of lack. If you are one who grew up during the Great Depression, you had a direct experience of lack. Life was really, really, really hard. A direct experience of lack. That can live in a person's body. And what's interesting is even when conditions change, and you have the experience of abundance and you have some prosperity, if you've had that deeply ingrained direct experience of poverty or deprivation, even when the bank account looks good or you look around you and you have the outer manifestation of abundance, it can still be easy to feel afraid. Any significant loss that a person has had, bankruptcy, losing your primary source of income because of a health challenge or being laid off, can be a direct experience of lack that really causes someone to think there's never going to be enough. Because again, if we go back to that core teaching, I keep going back to the difference between abundance and prosperity. If we think that our channels are the source of abundance, we're going to experience those temporary times of diminishment of resources as proof that lack is real. So direct experience can be a cause of scarcity thinking. A second is the society and culture we've grown up in. If we've grown up in a competitive environment, that can really play into our feeling that there just isn't enough, that there's just not enough to go around. I don't hear this expression very much anymore, but I can remember in like high school, junior high, high school, the expression keeping up with the Joneses, right? And those of us who heard that expression knew what that meant. You know, if the Joneses got a big TV, then in order to keep up with the Joneses, what did we need to do? We needed to go get a big TV. If they got a new car, we needed that cultural keeping up with those around us can cause us to have this belief that there's just not enough to go around, so I better get my TV just as soon as I possibly can. Or the messages we get on media and advertising, and now, you know, through social media that just portray these perfect lifestyles, right? Or we look at the posts on, you know, on Facebook, and everybody else's life looks so much better than ours, right? Right? And so we're in this competition or comparison model, and that can leave us feeling that there just isn't enough, so I better get mine as soon as I can get mine, and I better hold on to it as long and as tightly as I can. And then a third root is just our family and our religious upbringing, if we had any. How many of you have heard the expression, money is the root of all evil? Yeah. Is that a correct expression? What's missing? The love of money is the root of all evil. That's very different. Would you not agree? We need money to make the world go around, at least in the systems that we've set up now, ever since leaving systems of long ago that were based on barter and exchange, physical barter and exchange. We now use currency in place of, you know, I'll bring you a sack of potatoes because I need a sack of bananas, whatever it is. You know, we don't live in that world anymore. So we need currency to be able to do the things that we need and we want to do. But the currency isn't the problem. That biblical teaching has to be taken in its full context. Not that money is the root of all evil, but the love of it, the attachment of it. The Buddha taught that attachment to anything is not a helpful thing. The love of money means that we have misplaced priorities. Money should be a vehicle to help us accomplish what we need to accomplish and what we would like to accomplish. That's very, very different. So there are reasons that people grow up with this mindset of lack and limitation. And much of what we emphasize in metaphysics is that we can change that. And so here are some of the ideas for how we change that. I've already alluded to the first one, and that is self-awareness. We have to be aware when we are thinking. That's a beautiful sound. We have to be aware when we are thinking lack. That's why I asked you a moment ago to kind of just reflect back the last time you felt there wasn't enough of something. For some of us in this room, the main thing that may come up is the lack of money, the lack of resources. For others, it may be the lack of time. For others, it may be the lack of opportunity. It almost doesn't matter what it is. The practice is becoming aware and catching yourself, oh, I am holding this thought of lack and limitation. I am accepting this. And when we catch ourselves doing that, we want to pivot. We want to pivot and we want to ask ourselves, is this really true? Is this really true? And much of the time we're going to find, no, it's not. No, it's not. We catch ourselves with this limiting thought, this scarcity thought, and we challenge ourselves. We identify what the thought is, I don't have enough of. We identify where we are feeling it in our body and how we are feeling it. And then we work to transplant a different thought, a different picture at the same moment in time. And this is where our practice of affirmations and visualization is still valuable for us, no matter how many years we have been studying this stuff. Because it is a tool that helps us to pivot our thinking, to change the neurological pathways in the brain to go in a different direction. We can look and say, right now, my bank account looks like this. And right now, based on what it is I feel I need, it looks like lack. There's nothing wrong with accurately assessing a situation. In fact, I think that is an example of spiritual wisdom and maturity. We actually, I'll get the words out right, we actually name it and see it, but then we remind ourselves that is a temporary circumstance because that is playing into, or that is an expression of prosperity. The abundant opportunity still lives. Does that make sense? Then amen it. Because it does. We have got to read, especially at this time for so many people today, including our younger generation, that many of whom are struggling to get a job, right? We have to help them pivot in their thinking, to still do the work that's necessary to put yourself out there, to keep looking, to keep applying, but to remind yourself that there's a difference between the channel and the source. And while I pursue a lot of different channels, I'm going to keep my mind present on the source. I'm going to always remember that the ocean is ever flowing, and I can keep coming to it and pulling from it. So self-awareness is pivotal. We've got to catch ourselves in the act. It's like got to catch yourself when you put your hand in the cookie jar. Catch yourself when that limited thinking is rearing its ugly head. Second is a practice I know you know, and it's a practice of perspective. To me, perspective is such an important practice, such an important concept. Perspective is about choosing where we're going to look. It's about training ourselves to look in a certain way. And so the perspective is to lift our vision higher, to not just focus on the channel, but to lift our vision higher to the source. We can do this by consciously paying attention to the good that already exists right now. I don't care, I do care, because I care about you. But what I was going to say is, I don't care what's in your bank account. I don't care if you don't feel it's enough right now. Look at what you do have right now. Look at where you're sitting. What do they call San Diego? America's finest city. Yeah, it's expensive to live here, right? It is. But look at the goods you already have in your life. It is so important to consistently focus on that, to have that perspective, that we pay attention to that, to not be so trained that the first thing we see in our life or around us, what is broken, missing, or not working. But instead if we're going to identify what's broken, missing, not working, then we had better follow that up very quickly with, and hey, perspective. What is not broken? What is working? What is present? We know that energy flows where attention goes. We know that what we appreciate appreciates. What we appreciate appreciates. Close your eyes for another quick moment. And I want you to identify some good thing that you have plenty of in your life right now. Good thing that you have plenty of in your life right now. And now I want you to say thank you. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. You can open your eyes. You can open your eyes. You absolutely, and so do I, have an awful lot right here, right now that's working, that's good. And when we have the perspective and the practice to make sure that we never forget that, we will have the motivation and the stamina to make it through the times when things are difficult. I hope that makes sense. Third and fourth. Third one is curate your environment. Curate your environment. That word is been used a lot of late. The idea of curating, like curating your music, curating all sorts of different things. But the idea of curating is about carefully choosing and thoughtfully organizing the things you're going to bring into your life experience, whether it's your music or something else. Curate your environment. And by that I mean limit your exposure to scarcity-inducing elements. Limit your exposure to scarcity-inducing elements. Might mean that you have to turn the news off a little bit, or really put yourself on a diet, not so that you don't know what's going on. I think conscious people especially need to know what's going on. But you know, if maybe you've gone to the extreme and are consuming so much stuff and are getting so wrapped up in what the naysayers are saying, that it's taking your consciousness down at the very time that you need to be building your consciousness up. So, if necessary, if you know that you've been consuming too much stuff, too much news or stuff that's telling you there's just not enough, we're headed for really, really scary times, turn some of that off. Turn some of that off. And be really deliberate about what you let in here and what you let in here. And the fourth, I'm only going to mention briefly right now because next week I'm going to spend more time on it. But I like the wording of this. I can't take credit for it, but I like the wording of this. Give to interrupt the pattern. I like those words, to interrupt the pattern. Because one of the things that happens when we feel afraid, when we feel like our channels maybe are not as strong as they used to be, and the prosperity, the physical prosperity that we're attracting into our lives isn't enough or isn't going as far as it used to, which is a very real thing, right? When we go to the grocery store, we absolutely are experiencing that. So it is not uncommon when we experience that to feel like we have to hold back and to hoard or to protect out of fear. And what I want to say to you is, in the long run, that doesn't work. And this idea of giving to interrupt the pattern, where it can be helpful and important, is as soon as we give, one of the things that it sends as a signal to our brain and our psyche is, I have more than enough that I can share. One caveat here. If we give out of a feeling of guilt or fear, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. When we give to interrupt the pattern, we want to give from a mindset of trust. We want to give from a mindset of opening up to the flow in by allowing some of the flow out. For some of us, this is an easy thing to do, and for others, we may have to work at it at the level of the mind. We're going to talk more about that next week. But even if you don't do the thing, play around with the thought. Just entertain the thought. Say the words and think about them. Give to interrupt the pattern. Give to interrupt the pattern. And then in closing, as a quick reminder, life is not a zero-sum game. That the first piece of changing from a scarcity consciousness to abundant consciousness is working at the level of the mind. And that change is available to every single one of us. There's not one of us in this room that can't make a significant shift from the way that we have been thinking, especially if it's not working for us, to a healthier, more abundant way of thinking that can work for us and be a model for others. Namaste.